And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winnick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on the podcast today, which is Leveraging Thought Leadership. Today, my guest is Jeff DeGraff, which I'm really excited about today's episode. Jeff is an advisor to Fortune 500 companies, a professor at the Ross School of Business at U of M. His simultaneously creative and pragmatic approach to making innovation happen has led clients and colleagues to dub him the Dean of Innovation. He's written several books. If I went through all the titles, we'd be halfway out of time, probably 7 or 8. And he's appeared pretty much everywhere. Inc., Fortune, Psychology Today, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't know who he was prior to this, you will after, and you should have. So here we are. Welcome aboard, Jeff.
Thanks for having me on, Peter.
Cool. So let me ask you the first question, because there is no, in my view, other than the academic side of you, because you're an academic / thought leader / a lot of other things. How did you get here?
It's really weird. When I was really young, was not particularly a good student. And the only reason I went to college was I had a lot of wrestling scholarships and I had to take the test. This is the first year because of, this was the beginning of when you had to actually take an exam to go to college. And it turned out that I wasn't a complete idiot. And okay. I skipped my first year. And then I just kind of got momentum. And when I got out, I was only 25 years old when I had my PhD.
Wow.
I had an offer at an Ivy League school. And I thought, I just stopped for a minute and say, how did I get here? And something really weird happened. I moved to Ann Arbor to take a position in the medical school, being a professor in the medical school of all things. So my PhD is in an area that you would now call artificial intelligence, but there wasn't that term back. And I hated it. And I met a guy in a hippie bar. He passed away. His name was Bob Duha, who worked for a guy who had a $20 million pizza company. And I said, that sounds like more fun to me. And 5 years later, and $5 billion later, I sold the company to Mitt Romney at Bain Capital. It was Domino's Pizza. And I was one of the guys who built the company. So how I got here was I didn't know anything about business until we started to build one. And
so let's recap. So the way to become a world-renowned thought leader is be a not too bright wrestler, go to a hippie bar, and sell pizza.
Yeah. Right.
So let me write this down. So does it have to be in that order? Not too bright wrestler.
No, but you're really
pizza and PhD.
The Forrest Gump aspect of this. And I have to tell you something, Peter. I'm on all these think tanks, and most of the ones that I know who have done really well in this field, not any different. Yeah. One of the guys found the dead for like 3 years and the ski bum in Jackson Hole. And
I was talking to someone last week and I say, if you and I were to go to the dentist and ask our dentist how we got here, we can predict the answer to the story. Blah, 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 went to dental school, blah, 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 I'm a dentist. If you ask any of my clients and friends and colleagues how they got here and they gave the answers just like you did, if my dentist gave me that, I'd be out of that chair so quickly, right? But in this world, it's part of the beauty, and the amazing part of it is that there is no logical linear. You've got to do A, B, C, D, E, F.
Because there is no career for people like us. You have to make your job. You have to make your career, and you're making it up as you go along. And so those very skills that get you in trouble when you're young are the very skills that separate you when you enter the workplace, because there is nobody giving you the problem set. You have to figure it out.
Well, so let's go there for a minute. So part of that is, I would argue that you would be a horrible employee at a Fortune 500, right? Because you're questioning things, you're innovating, you're creating, you're pushing back, whatever. All the stuff that makes you the best at what you do would make you the worst at something else that lots of other people do.
There are many people who think I'm a terrible employee at the University of Michigan.
So, thank God for tenure, right?
Yeah, well, yes.
Right.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. In fact, I was just on a call this morning with the government of Singapore. I'm an advisor to the government of Singapore. And one of the things that I was talking to this one guy, and it was just amazing. He talked about how he created his lab. And here I am in my lab across the street from the University of Michigan. I built it with a partner and in my own money. And it's exhibiting a lot of self-authorizing behavior. And he talked about the same thing. And it was really funny. Encounters the same issues with bureaucracy because innovation, Peter, is a form of positive deviance.
Correct.
And deviance is created by deviance. I don't know how to put this. So what happens is, in the institutional mode, bureaucracies love to pull things to standardization. And innovation requires the more deviant the innovation is, the more valuable it is, assuming that it works.
Sure.
So you can imagine that all bureaucracy is basically trying to assimilate innovation. That's why innovation doesn't happen at the heart of big companies. So this is why you get called into all these big companies, right? It happens at the boundaries. And only people who've lived at the boundaries where there's a lot of white space.
But the big companies have the balance sheets and the systems and the processes to acquire the innovative and give them more leverage and scale, at least in theory many times.
No, and that's part of the growth mechanism. If you think about this for a minute, there's kind of a pyramid here, and it's a pyramid that starts at the bottom and then goes all the way to the top with startups, and it works the other way around. So if you think about innovation for a minute, the bottom of the pyramid is always going to be research. There's 21 research universities in this country. I'm lucky enough to teach at the second largest one. They were unlocking the secrets of nature. It's very, you live a kind of a monastic life, and I do it too. Then it has to go to, where there's technology transfer, and that can happen with companies. It can happen with institutes. And then, of course, it finally goes to either a startup that's willing to take a chance, and eventually that has to sell out to a larger company that's got channels and scope and scale. At least that's the American system. If you're talking about Singapore or Israel, it's going to be different. But that's our system. And so the real challenge of all of this is living with people who have very different skills and very different views of the world and making those handoffs work. That's where we get.
Yeah, I love it. So I want to switch for a moment because I love the positive deviance piece, right? Because if you think about it, in the world of a Bernie Madoff, he was actually a brilliant financier, but he went negative deviance, right? And he actually was on the positive side of that for a long, long time, and had, you don't become president of NASDAQ by being an idiot, right?
Well, the same is true for drug dealers, terrorists,
narcos.
What if you could turn that positive, right? I mean, think about all the intellectual acumen there.
Well, and you watch all the documentaries on like Narcos or one of those. It's like he clearly could have been the CEO of a startup of the next Amazon or Tesla, but the white powder or whatever they were doing. So let's move to sort of another area. So you've got the lab, you speak, you teach. There's lots of things that you do. Yeah. Give me the shortened version of the underlying business model, because one of the things that we focus on a lot is, okay, so I'm a positive deviant. I've got a bunch of great ideas. How do I scale, leverage, and monetize that? What are the ways that I can turn that into a business? Yeah, you've done it lots of ways.
It started in a really kind of narcissistic way. I just thought I like to build things, and I like to be around new projects all the time, and I like to be around new people all the time. So when I came to the University of Michigan, I was brought there by Bob Quinn and Kim Cameron, and I was really in the shadow of C.K. Prahalad, maybe the most famous innovation strategist in the 20th century. And
no pressure.
I got to be the crazy guy who did weird stuff, and I was supported by these people, and not by everyone else. And so what happened is you start to get kind of, I hate to put it this way, kind of a cult following. We had, we had a bunch of people who went on did pretty well
But the flip side of that cult following, because I want to push on this, is you were at the time an acquired taste, and it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Because I think a lot of people try to placate or satisfy.
Absolutely, and it was early. And one of the things that I had to my advantage, when I was really young, I got to be an advisor to something called AIS at Apple, Applied Integrated Systems. I was Steve Jobs' advisor. And one of the things that really I was able to do very early on was to make a couple demands. And the first demand was I didn't teach my business school courses in the school of business. I taught them across the street in the residence college. And the reason for that was I felt like if students were in the same environment, they'd have the same problems. And in fact, when Bob Quinn asked me to come to Michigan, teach MBAs, remember, I don't have a business degree. I remember saying, MBAs are dull, drab, and awful. You can hear them think. Remember, we had stolen PepsiCo's lunch money. We'd eat Pizza Hut all around the block, and McDonald's and everybody else. So my view was, they don't know how to think. And his point was, yes, we need to do this. So the first thing was I found somebody who got me. That's the first step. And somebody who protected me, because lots of people came after me.
Right.
This isn't businessy. And you've got to remember, this is way before the books. Remember, this is the 80s.
Now you're just a pain in the neck. You're not the world-renowned Jeff DeGraff. You're just this irritating out there guy. Yeah.
Who am I? And then the second thing that started happening was, I started getting on the speaking circuit, and I'm pretty glib, and I'm pretty fast. And so what happens is on the speaking circuit, the people who liked me a lot were senior executives because I'm telling them the truth. You know, a lot of people speak and they tell people what they want to hear. I'm the guy that speaks and says, you know, your underwear's showing. And oh, by the way, this guy's around the corner from you and you think you've got an edge on him and he's going to beat the stuffing out of you.
Yeah.
And you were, we were just talking about Tom Peters. Tom Peters was great at this. And if I learned it from anybody, I learned it from Peters. You know, the whole notion of, you know, we're not prepared. What do we need to do? And what it started happening was I started taking a lot of these very interesting ideas I had, and I started codifying them into a way to think.
If you're enjoying this episode of Leveraging Thought Leadership, please make sure to subscribe. If you'd like to help spread the word about our podcast, please leave us a review and share it with your friends. We're available on Apple Podcast and on all major listening apps, as well as at thoughtleadershipleverage.com/podcasts.
And so that
let me pause you there. So you fast forwarded through a part that many people stumble. So you've got some insight, you've got some wisdom, you've got some ideas, and there's lots of things that you can do with it. Going through this process, which is not always easy, of codifying that into models, methodologies, frameworks, et cetera, that become the skeleton by which you can build on other scalable pieces, is an absolute, my opinion, absolutely critical piece that some people are either unaware of, try to skip over, et cetera. So stay there for a moment.
Yeah, that's a great observation. And what I did, I basically was the water boy for Quinn and Cameron, who developed one of the most important models of all time, the competing values framework. And I looked at it and said, you know, this will do a lot more than what you're doing with it. Right. So I was not the founder. Quinn and Cameron founded this deal.
You found a new sort of application.
Yes. I said, well, you know, this is really more of an innovation model, and here's what I would do with it. And here's the, you know, so it's a 2-story house that you build into an apartment complex.
Yep.
And the other thing was, most people don't know, I was the last doctoral student, graduate student of Rudolf Arnheim. So those people out there I listen who love to talk about design thinking, and, you know, God bless John Simon, but Arnheim wrote the original book on this in like 1938.
Literally.
He quoted he's given us the term visual thinking and all that. So I'm last of the Mohicans. The whole field is created by this guy named Max Wertheimer in 1900 Berlin. He's got these two great students, Arnheim and Kurt Lewin, who creates positive psychology. Arnheim creates this whole field that we call design thinking now. So the second thing that I added was all those elements early on into this Quinn and Cameron model. So I'm borrowing from my mentors. And finally,
but let me, because you're giving yourself less credit than one might. It's that cross-pollination, that multidisciplinary approach. So, you know, let's not forget that economics has been around for, 400 years. Psychology's been around for several hundred years. Those two first had a baby 25 years ago, and voila, behavioral economics, right? Which
absolutely. That's a great insight. So, but what I would say, the reason I'm saying this to your listeners is I'm a synthesizer. I'm a pattern seeker, right? So when Prahalad came out with core competencies and the fortune of the bottom of the pyramid, what I did was take these 3 schools of thought and put them together and created one of the key schools of thought now for innovation, right? And created this innovation code model, or the innovation genome, or whatever people are calling my work. I hear it called a lot of different things these days, but that's fine. So now I'm speaking and now I'm teaching this kind of model. And then what was interesting is something interesting happened, which is, you know, you write books and I wrote a lot of articles and PBS and the whole 9 yards, right? So then I started getting 2 sets of questions. One was from students, and this was about, I'm going to go back to about 20 years, where I was kind of frustrated and thinking about leaving being in the academy, because I thought, you know, you guys just want to talk about crap all the time. And I was really worried that our students weren't really learning how to be innovators. You learn to be an innovator in the same way I did. See one, do one, teach one. See one, do one, teach one, right? So I was going to leave. And I had a lovely dean who said, don't leave. Why don't you just do what you want to do? Which is very rare for an academic.
Sure.
Saying, you know, this is, I'm going to let you go build something on your own. We're not going to say this is a conflict of interest for me. So I called a couple friends, said, do you guys want to throw in? And do we want to buy the bank across the street? Tear the front off of it and give keys to the 7 coolest people we know. In fact, one of them you might know is Thomas Zurbuchen, the great chief scientist at NASA, right? So these are really cool people. And the only rule was bring your kids, bring your young people, and you're only going to work on creative work. So we started doing this stuff as a university community. And then remember, this is way before the D school. This is a decade before we work. This is way early, right? And what started happening was CEOs started peeking in and saying, I want my senior leaders to do this. And that's how, Prudential and GE and Google and everybody else got involved in this stuff over the years. And so what happened was the same process by which we were developing these young people became the process by which we were developing these very seasoned people who had maybe not.
So you took what was an internal process that was built not for commercial application, but as a need. I need to take all this raw material, these really bright young folks, and train them up. And now it has application and value.
And I didn't build it to make money. Peter,
Right,
I built it to just offset my cost. Right. And it was a huge surprise to me.
Was anything done deliberately, or is everything is serendipity sort of the theme song?
I think it is serendipity. And I think the issue is this. I think what happens is all of us, there's a great quote in the A Christmas Carol Dickens has, and he says, Ebenezer, when good fortune shows up, offer him a comfortable chair. Right, and I just think a lot of people they're not mindful enough to say, this is an opportunity, I'm going to snag it.
Well, and I think there's two reasons for that, maybe more. One is it takes ear tuning, if that's a word, to be able to listen to the market. And sometimes the market will always tell you what it wants, but you're not always listening, right? That's number one. And number two, oftentimes people are creating, and I'll say in the lab, but I don't mean in the way your lab is, but in isolation. They think this sort of creative process is done in isolation. I know all there is to do. I'm going to build this out to the 11th decimal point and then go out to the marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Peter. And if I can add to that, one of the things I've noticed with other people kind of been mildly successful or really successful at this is they notice anomalies. They're sensitive.
Exactly.
They look at, that doesn't seem congruous to me. And I certainly fit that bill where people tell me stuff all the time and it's sort of the party line and I'll think,
sure,
that doesn't make sense. So,
but you have to do that almost at the, I don't want to say intuitive level, but before the data is showing it to everyone. It's almost like
I think it is intuitive. Yeah. I think you have to be,
it's your spidey senses. You have to have
facility between the creative part of your neocortex, the creative part of your brain, if you're a neurobiologist,
yep.
And the more rational parts of your brain. I absolutely think you have to be an ambassador and be able to translate what's going on in your head. In fact, that's why the new book is called The Creative Mindset. The new book's called The Creative Mindset, the Mastering the 6 Skills That Empower Innovation. And the reason I did this, I took a whole bunch of research and I just tried to make it really digestible for an ordinary person. I'm big on the democratization of innovation. I'm from a blue collar neighborhood. I understand that sometimes it becomes too lofty. So I tried to say, your brain already does this. You just need to be more mindful and you need a few skills to pay attention to.
But that's another contrarian thing about you is most academics, when they speak in academese, it's to show other academics that they're smart, the smartest person in the room, and they've just excluded 99.999% of the world, right? And so academics are publishing in academic journals that 3 people read. Okay, well, that doesn't seem like a gratifying use case of my brilliance if I was an academic. So I love the fact that you're able to translate it into usable English.
Peter, it's a constant struggle I have. The struggle I have is, the good news is I'm far enough along and I've done enough things in that realm. I have had the big NSF grants and I've done all that stuff. But I mostly did it. The same reason I did a PhD was to punch a ticket. I mean, I'd love to tell you I was trying to do something, but so that I could get to where I wanted to do the work that I wanted to do. It's not just serendipity. That's part of it. There's a lot of work. It's fun work.
Right,
it's super exciting, fun, but it's work. Lots of airplanes, lots of rejection, lots of, putting your shoulder to the wheel.
So as we start to wrap, one last sort of thought or question for you. So out there now is you some number of years ago, let's say a significant number of years ago, relatively speaking, right? And they're that outsider. They're the wrestler at the hippie bar that started a pizza joint. Now it would be a vegan kale joint, and it's, I don't know, they're gluten-free and maybe wrestling's not cool, so it's, I don't know, whatever it is. It's virtual wrestling.
X Games.
What would you say? It's X Games, right? So it's the X Game person at the gluten-free smoothie bar that's eating, kale-flavored pizza chips or whatever. What would you advise them, if anything?
I'd say 2 things. Number 1, think about your life in terms of 4 things. And I want you to get feedback from everybody you know. Number 1, what are you incompetent at? And own it. Just own it. Own it. Number 2, what are you competent at, but it means you're average? Own it. Number 3, what are you masterful at? That's great. So are a lot of other people. And number 4, what are you unique at? What are you designed to do? And let me put it another way. I don't care at all what you want to do. There's a lot of people on American Idol auditions who nobody loved them enough to tell them they couldn't sing, right? What is it you're designed to do? It's your natural gift, what you've learned, experience, and just do that. That's the first thing. Know the thing. And then the second thing is surround yourself with amazing talent that pushes back on you. Really creative people are not moved by people who believe in the same crap they believe.
Sure.
They get disconfirming feedback. They look for people who have different ideas, and they create hybrid ideas that normal people on their own can't get to. I was incredibly lucky that early in my career, I had an opportunity to figure out what I sucked at and what I was good at.
That's a gift.
And then not a gift. It was more like a beating for a while, but that's the way it goes.
Tomato, right?
That's right. And then the second part was I've been extremely lucky in the community. And they're not, for as big as our community here is at the Innovatorium, right? The Innovatorium Institute for Innovation. My real community is probably 6 or 7 people. And
I love it.
And they don't agree with me, and they push back a lot. And it makes it, I have to grow on a regular basis. That's what I would advise.
Thank you. Well, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate your time and your effort, and I've been a fan of your work for a long time. So I feel like, long time listener, first time caller. So
thanks for having me on, Peter. I really appreciate it.
Thanks. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.